in terms of the outcome, I think that you have a decent chance at getting an air ceasefire in place because they want to do something that's going to show that there's, even if it's just incremental progress, something that you can get tangible to say there's reason to have another meeting here. And Trump has also talked about ahead of time that he would like to see a trilateral meeting with Trump, Zelensky, and Putin, all three of those. I personally don't see any chance that that's going to be the next one, or see very little chance, I guess. Let me not be categorical here because a lot of things are fluid and volatile and up in the air. That could happen, but I think it's very unlikely, not because of Trump or Putin, but because of Europe and Zelensky. Because I think the last thing Zelensky wants to do is codify anything that's going to result in the war ending on terms beneficial to the Russian side. He wants to continue going on. He's so far been detached from reality. Hard for me to imagine that's going to radically change overnight just because Trump and Putin agree to something. That's part of the challenge for Trump, that he's probably aware, certainly some of his people on his staff are aware, that whatever he may agree to here is going to have to be agreed to by the European and the Ukraine side. He actually said as much earlier today that he understands that that's the case. So he's consciously aware of that. But the pressure is really on, I think, just Trump more than Putin to come up with some kind of tangible outcome here. Now, this is on President One. He said, President One, Air Force One, on the way to the meeting, Trump said a number of things. You're going to see a photograph here because this was an audio recording, just so you understand what we're seeing here. But this is what Trump says in that he recognizes that this is indeed a high stakes meeting.
You had said earlier this week that Putin would face severe consequences if you get the sense from him that he's not interested. What do you mean by that?
Economically severe. Yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but I'm doing this to save a lot of lives. Yeah, very severe. Thank you very much, everybody.
So, yes, I'm not in this for my health, and just to try to bring the war together. And that's one thing. I found a lot of fault with some of the way he's done a lot of this stuff. The fact that he said he was going to have it in a day, then 100 days and all that. So, and then here we are. But he does still step at it, and I still absolutely give President Trump credit, much in contrast to his predecessor, who did nothing to have any opportunity to end the war, had many opportunities, rejected them all, and instead just kept on stuffing more bombs and missiles and stuff into the war machine so that the war continued on, and gave diplomatic cover to Zelensky and just, as long as it takes and all this kind of stuff. All that did is get more Ukrainians killed, and it's going to raise the eventual cost of the loss that Ukraine that's already baked in. But Trump, to his credit, is focused on the human cost of it. In fact, in this next set here, he talks again about his motivation for wanting to see this come to an end.
We get along. There's a good respect level on both sides, and I think something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia, and that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled. I want everybody to do well. The war's got to stop, and the killing's got to stop.
Now, listen, I actually believe Trump won there. I think he genuinely does want the war to come to an end. I think he genuinely is motivated by the killing that's happening on both sides. He entered into office talking a lot about it. This isn't my war. I didn't start it. Wouldn't have happened if I had been in office. I think that there's some validity to that argument that it wouldn't have started with him for various reasons. Trump is just certainly not eager and interested in getting into a war with Russia. He's interested in getting this thing off. I do have some criticism when it comes to what he's done over 6 months now in office, and that still hasn't happened. But as they say, better late than never. So now then the real question is going to be what kind of terms are going to be required. Now, the Russian side has been very unequivocal, and they have been very consistent in exactly what they said is going to have this. It's going to have to be the root causes are going to have to be addressed. That's NATO in Ukraine is one of the primary things. The second thing is and just barely second place to that is the conditions for the ethnic Russians that are living inside of Ukraine on both sides of the line of contact, not just on the parts that they occupy, but even on the western side of the current line of contact. So Russia says there's got to be some kind of clarity that there is going to be protections for the Russian-speaking people on any side of the line, or on anything that some Ukraine government will continue to control. There has to be no NATO, so they have to be unaligned militarily. They have to be demilitarized to a certain level. Russia's doing a lot of that on the ground right now, and has been with a lot of the destruction. This 12-point peace plan here. This is what the Russian side proposed at the end of the second direct meeting between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul a month or so ago, and those things are apparently all still on the table. This Russian officials have said just in the last 48 hours that the conditions that Putin set in June 2024 are also still on the table, and that means that Ukraine will have to militarily withdraw from all the administrative borders of all four oblasts. And the southern three of those especially, there is substantial territory that Ukraine controls. So it remains, it's a very, very long process that's going to have to be done to get Zelensky to agree to that. You may be able to compel or coerce Zelensky and Europe to agree to an aerial ceasefire. That's something that benefits both Russia and Ukraine. That seems to be the easiest thing to get, because there is interest on both sides in getting that. Maybe work toward doing that as confidence building measures to move towards a permanent ceasefire. Russia has signaled a willingness to discuss it, a willingness to talk to a ceasefire, but only if a bunch of conditions are attached. Of course, the Western side wants an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. So again, there's at least some level of interest on both sides of that, something that you can work towards. But when we're talking about getting to an end of war discussion, those territories are going to be central. And in fact, territory swaps is one of the things that Trump was also asked about on Air Force One.
We saw that Russia continued its violence into Ukraine last night, launching even more drones. What did you make of that?
I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later.
Are the territorial swaps on the table?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Because that's another thing there at the end. He's talking about Putin wanted all of Ukraine. Putin has never wanted all of Ukraine. Any Russian expert that we've talked to a lot says that they don't even want the western half of that. They would continue to conquer more territory if they think it's necessary for their security, but they definitely don't want that because they recognize that that will be a long-term problem that they would have to deal with an insurgency and all kinds of stuff. It's not anything they want. Definitely not a priority for them. Interesting, at the first part of that clip, he's talking about, again, these air attacks that continue to go on the Russian side. He says, I think it's going to work against him, but Putin thinks that's good. No, obviously that works for him. He's in a position of authority and in a position of strength relative to the Ukraine side, especially in the air. So he's going to continue to play that. He's going to continue to harm Ukraine with the intention of showing them the longer you delay, the more pain you're going to inflict deep throughout your country, not just on the line of contact. Interesting also, and not surprising, that none of the reporters ever mentioned the fact that those attacks are going in both directions. Ukraine continues to launch long-range strikes into Russia, and they've actually been having some success. Again, just in recent days, they've hit a number of oil refineries and other, I think, drone factories in some cases that Russia definitely doesn't want hit, and they're having a difficult time defending them. Well, they've got them scattered throughout the country, so they're painful. It's not going to stop the war going on because they have some protections and they also have redundancy. So it's not going to cause them to, knock them out of the war. It's not going to cause any real impact on the front line, at least none that we've been able to see so far. But that just shows you that there is some motivation and reason why both sides would want an air ceasefire. So that's certainly my hope that they go down that path. But then the issue he said at the end that Trump says, well, territory swaps are going to have to be. Now he's of course this all started here with Trump's when he sent Witkoff last Wednesday, a week ago last Wednesday, and that's what prompted all this stuff here. And then there's no doubt in my mind that Witkoff was reminded again that those terms from June 2024 are still in place. And that means all the administrative orders of those four territories. And that means the withdrawal of the Ukraine army and then all those other things. So that is still going to be a part of it. So this is, there's possibility that this conversation moves to a second level and a second step in a process to bring peace. This is not going to come quick. The Russian army is not going to stop fighting on the ground. The Russian Air Force is not going to stop fighting in the air. The drones are going to continue to fly until an agreement is made. So Putin definitely wants to keep pushing in that direction to give motivation, not just to Kiev, because I think they're impervious to this in terms of Zelensky, but to the European Union and to the United States that we're relentless in this and we're going to continue to go, but we're happy to keep talking, just like during the Korean War negotiations where both sides continued to fight and until they both got the pain got so bad that they were willing to have an armistice in that case. This one, I think Russia won't settle for an armistice because they don't have to. The Chinese and the North Korean side in that case did because it was virtual parity in all the cases. And the United States had nuclear weapons, et cetera. So that was not going to go anywhere at that time. So that dynamic is different. But the fact that they continue fighting, I think, is the same here. Let's take a look a little bit at the Russian side here, too, heading into this. As President Trump mentioned in there, the delegation is actually quite large for the Russian side, and it's also very telling. There are certainly are the heads of state, naturally. There's also a lot of diplomats that are in place, and there's lots of business people in place as well. And that tells you something about both how the United States and Russia are thinking about these negotiations. They're not just looking to get the war over, but they're looking even beyond. And that applies on both of the main delegations today. First of all, let's take a look at the diplomatic side with Sergei Lavrov, who made this comment when coming into the meeting.
Мы никогда не загадываем ничего наперед. Мы знаем, что у нас есть аргумент, у нас есть позиция понятная, четкая. Мы будем ее излагать. Здесь уже немало сделано в ходе визитов Стивена Уиткофа, президент об этом сказал. И Уиткоф выступал от имени президента Трампа. Надеюсь, что мы сегодня, завтра продолжим этот очень полезный разговор.
So he kind of repeated the same things that we've been talking about, that this is about Witkoff, meeting that started this, and he reiterates that Russia has been very clear on their position. They're going to state it again, so there's no communication, no doubt. But the diplomacy is often a lot more than just what's being said, and also other actions. And this clip that you're seeing rolled on your screen here, that's Sergei Lavrov when he came in, and you see right there through his shirt, you can see CC on it. That is part of a sweatshirt he's wearing, which says CCCP, which is the Cyrillic alphabet for USSR. It's been made a lot in both the Western and the Russian media. Both sides are aware of this. Obviously not a mistake. You rarely see, in fact, I have literally never seen Sergei Lavrov pop into anywhere where he's not wearing a suit when he knew the people were watching. So that was for sure an intentional sign. I think that it shows on the Russian side a lot of confidence. That they're trying to get some of that Soviet mojo back, back when during the Cold War, when there were two powerful blocs that were equal. I think that's the primary intent here. Many in the West are going to say, no, that's them saying that they want to recreate the USSR. And that feeds into the narrative that many on the West have said. So I'm not sure that this was really a great idea for the Russians. Maybe they don't care what the Western side is saying about this. But that could have some impact, and it's certainly going to feed the fears of many in the West.